Welcome back to Hour 3, our Preparedness Civil Defense Earth Changes panel, special the hour. And of course, John Moore at the top of the hour has his own program over at Republic Radio, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, Monday to Friday. John, what's the latest reports that you're having?
Well, Dr. Bill, thank you. Good to be here. One of my confidential sources is verified is from two independent sources that all surgeons nationwide that work at hospitals have been told that even when they're off duty, if they get a phone call, they're expected to show up at their hospital within 15 minutes of getting the phone call. We're not sure.
You're talking about all surgeons, both military and non-military?
Right, civilians as well. We think this is coming from Department of Homeland Security. We're not positive. We don't know who would have authority to put out that kind of order otherwise, and how they could even order civilians to do anything.
Well, I know that they have executive orders, and they notified us when we went to our common training. And even if I'm retired, they keep track of all of us so that they know that they can have people, including, by the way, people who need to understand they're training thousands of veterinarians to treat medical people, and they have medical manuals, actually, for veterinarians to do things like tracheostomies, deal with damaged medical personnel or injured civilians. So,
right. Well, the second thing, we talked about this privately. A new take. I spent 2 hours with a Native American elder yesterday, and he suggested a new take on these FEMA camps. Now, the FEMA camps that we've heard about for so many years, they have a capacity of maybe 1.8 or 2 million people, which would be about 1/2 of 1% of the people in this country. He says, well, John, consider this. Maybe these camps are set up for the following people. Healthy men and women, Caucasians between 18 and 40 years old, with 120 plus IQ, that are healthy, athletic, and have good education. The point being, this would be a preservation of the gene pool and DNA.
In other words, it's like a gene bank thing or a continuity of society by having at least a seed of the population that would be able to carry on civilization with a vastly reduced population.
Exactly. And from my knowledge, just from military recruitment, that 2 million people would be a big chunk of the folks in that age group that are healthy, athletic, and have IQs above 120. It's probably darn near most of them.
Right. Now, have you heard anything further about the Earth changes occurring, or the approach of I call it the Passover star. Some people call it Planet X. I like to refer to it as not a planet, it's a red dwarf star with a debris field of objects orbiting around it. Well, we had recently, by the way, a report, and I wanted to say this, we had a report that Jupiter's hit with a very large asteroid here just last week. We also have a report of a 800-meter asteroid that's supposed to hit Antarctica in 2012. And this is a British Columbia professor actually reported this, and it was taken 2 days later off his site. It was actually reported on the phas.ubc.ca website for 2 days. It was taken. They're using a balloon bore larger aperture sub-millimeter telescope or blast at Memorial Station in Antarctica. They were later tracked by the Canadian France Hawaii telescope on Mauna Kea. So, do you have any information on this, Ann or John?
Well, I hear and see the same reports that you do, Dr. Bill, and eventually there's going to be something come up that we know is real and is verifiable, and we may be real close to the point.
We know that next February, which is my birthday, believe it or not, 15th, there's an object supposed to be 197 feet across. It's going to whip past the Earth at under 5,000 miles off the Earth's surface. And they took all the data off now, so as Ann said before, keep recalculating it, getting closer and closer, and it's with an error, a margin of error that could indicate as high as a chance of 1 in 100 of striking the Earth. Now that's large enough to take out Luxembourg, or to have a major climatic effect on the planet.
Right.
So, we're dealing with things that they say they keep track of these objects. They're not even tracking objects that are big enough to cause major cataclysms on the planet that can whip past. So, the fact is they probably know more than they're saying, but they're not saying. Like the magnetic flux field is changing rapidly. The North Pole is migrating at an ever-increasing pace towards Siberia. The ozone layer is thinning primarily because of decrease in oxygen and a decrease in the magnetic flux field. So, you know, we're being told lies and more lies, and then, of course, they want to put carbon taxes on us. They're going to start here November 14th here in Hawaii, and they want to do carbon taxes if Obama gets back in. His first policy, green policy, is green energy, green industries. I mean, you got two maniacs. You got Obama, who won't probably support the Jews in a nuclear attack on Iran, but he wants to give us social, I call it eco-communism. And then we got Romney, who will probably attack Iran and Syria that could precipitate a thermonuclear and biological weapons exchange.
Well, it's a very strange world, and getting stranger by the minute, isn't it?
Yeah. So, Ann, what reports do you have?
Well, I'm just, this first I heard that surgeons across the United States have been put on alert, although I guess the surgeons I know wouldn't, I guess that's something you keep pretty closely tight to your chest. That's not something you would tell people that you just casually know anyway. But,
yeah, exactly. It's a national security thing. Apparently, they say if you've been an ATLS certified doctor, meaning trauma, even if you're retired, you can be called out immediately. And it's actually something that they keep track of everybody, including myself. I haven't got a notice yet, but I would assume that they are going to be tight enough if there is a national disaster. They'll not only call doctors, but veterinarians to fill in those roles as well, or PAs and nurse practitioners that are trained in trauma as well.
Well, I did. One of the ladies that I know, her daughter went back to work after having a child, and after delivering a baby, and 6 weeks later she went back to work, and she was told that she needed another class. And so I'm beginning to think that, yeah, they want the nurses to be as highly educated as possible too.
Yeah, they're trying to upgrade them. John, do you have new reports on Dr. McKinney's work on the plasma universe in terms of the approach of the Nemesis dwarf star, I call it the Passover star? Anything new on magnetic fields? Anything else going on in space weather?
Well, nothing new other than the fact that Professor McKinney continues to monitor these events and shares the concern that we all have that we're in a fast-changing world.
Yeah, exactly. And talk about the sinkholes. You guys sent me a bunch of data about sinkholes and about some very serious concerns in terms of the butane storage depot down in Louisiana, and the fact that there appears to be some signs of maybe a connection between the butane storage site and this giant sinkhole that's very close to it.
Okay, well, the sinkhole continues to grow, and in let's see, about on the 17th, it 20 by 20 foot growth, and on the 18th another 200 square feet, and then just yesterday another 25 feet. So it continues to grow. Whether it's getting deeper enough, they promised us, the state of Louisiana promised us that they would again measure the how close it was to the salt dome. Now you understand what the oil companies do is they drill caverns into the salt dome, and the dome is like it's just all salt. It's salt. It's solid salt. And then they take their drilling equipment and they carve out like a cave, and then they use that to store extra butane or methane, or in one case, Texas, Brian was storing used drilling equipment. Now this was drilling equipment that
they're also doing it. They're also doing that, by the way. They're using it's the primary storage for all of the nuclear waste from rock flats, and also the chemical weapons that they degrade chemically but are toxic. They store in salt mines outside of Dallas, Texas. But the main depot for all the nuclear waste from all these nuclear reactors is being shipped, including Rocky Flats, to salt mines outside Dallas. Interesting, eh?
Mm-hmm.
It's also dangerous. Welcome back, and we're joined with Alexander Bachman. And Alexander, you've got some pretty shocking information here to share. Some people consider it's over the top, but let's kind of vet it out and explain. You've got photos, visual evidence, etc. What are you showing today?
Thank you, Dr. Legal. hello, Ann and John, and everybody that's listening out there. A series of reports have been, taking the web by storm. Basically, there are of naval conflagrations, where at least, the Chinese Navy operating off the U.S. coast outside of San Francisco. This was reported first by Kerry Cassidy out of Project Camelot, then was backed up at least by a veteran who has military contacts called Duff by Veterans Today. He's the chief editor of Veterans Today. Well, I've been, behind this story ever since July of this year. We've been receiving information that these underwater, we can call them UFOs, but they're not necessarily UFOs. They're just craft that are non-human.
They're crafts, yeah.
Yeah, they're non-human. And some of them are military, advanced military weapons that are being put into operation in preparation for the Third World War. So we have to discern which event is which, and according to the information they have...
false UFO invasion, or false UFO invasion, which is one of the unifying things that the globalists wrote about in the Council on Foreign Relations years ago.
Exactly.
And it was also echoed by not only Edward Teller, but also Werner von Braun himself made statements to that effect. So this is not the statements of Alexander Bachman and DEAGLE. We're just quoting those who actually said this to the founders of literally a modern science era, Dr. Edward Teller and Werner von Braun, and only allowed the space mission to go to the moon possible.
Exactly, and we've been informed just moments ago, this has not been verified as of yet, that in effect an EMP weapon has been used or deployed over the atmosphere over North America this morning, and it was neutralized. So things going on behind the scenes, very important things are going on behind the scenes, and people need to be aware of this.
Yeah, what I do is most of the time I keep it in, I call it 10% of information I think people are ready for, but I'm going to stray a little bit and kind of explain a few things. Firstly, we're, and I want to lay this out so people realize that this is not like open to their opinion either. This is just the way it is. Number one, you have to understand that our universe is very vast. There's 460 trillion galaxies in our universe. There's more galaxies in our universe than stars in our galaxy. You have to understand also, there's also other dimensions. And what our Bible tells us is these other dimensions, these beings that are coming across, I call them, the best way to describe them would be transdimensionals. And in fact, even if you were to quote from a different part of the universe or another universe, you'd have to leap across dimensions to even go across time-space. The time it takes to cross from light from one side of our galaxy to another is 100,000 years. So any kind of light-based craft would never get here, okay, or wouldn't get here in a reasonable period of time. You're going between galaxies, you're talking about somewhere around between 5 and 50 or 100 million years just to travel from another galaxy. Like the Andromeda galaxy is 5 million light years away from our galaxy. So any quote visitation, even within our local universe, is going to cause immense amounts of time if you're traveling at sublight speeds. Secondly, what you have to deal with is that we have been invaded and fiddled with and done evil to by what I call, this is right through the Bible. So every ancient book, it talks about the serpent, it talks about invading consciousness, invading our civilization with technology, dominating, creating special, if you want to call it, over a class of a breed that we call serpent man. It's right there in the ancient writings, right, from the understanding of the Naga in ancient Oceania to the Chitauri in South Africa and all over the world. So people should understand that right when I'm talking about the serpent, you're referring to specific beings that actually are significantly more intelligent than the human beings, that are significantly evil. And there's been collaboration with these beings.
That are mentioned in the Bible.
Right, actually the primary ones of them are called when you look at the sides of the buildings in Europe, you'll notice this thing on the side called the gargoyles. They're actually referring to the Gorgons, which the ancients worship, which is why the positions of the three pyramids in Egypt were actually pointed out exactly in the positions of the stars of the belt of Orion, because they believe that these beings came to Earth, and they've seen the Bible 200 years, ascended to Mount Horeb, and transferred technology to mankind. They were called the fishman, or the amphibious fishman. They were basically the Superman that literally genetically hybridized with human beings who created the giants. And people say, oh, well, that's all just theory. That's not true. I said, I'm sorry, you're wrong. That it says right in our Bible that these things are happening. Now, what does that bring it down to today? And I have this right from Space Command where I worked as a civilian doctor there. 95% of these vehicles that we have are ours. We have an entire fleet of Aurora Space Fleet that use tokamak fusion reactors. The reason why they took the Tinker Toy space shuttle out, which was designed in the 1930s in Germany, out of service, is because we have entire fleets that travel not only to our moon base on the moon, which has been there since the 60s, but we also have operational colony on Mars. And people don't want to hear this. They think, oh, that's all craziness. It's not craziness, it's just the way it is.
No, there's so many military projects that go
I'm going to quote the Director of Space Command. We control every cubic centimeter of space between here and Mars. That's an actual quote from the Director of Space Command. And of course he says, so you don't freak out, we're going to tell you all this stuff straight up. So you don't freak out when you realize that the world you've been told exists never existed. Now, where does it bring us to now? Why are all these things showing up now? Because there's a battle, not just for our souls, really, because mankind is a being just like, we refer to God, which is so we can understand God, the triune being. God is still one, but Jesus Christ was the fullness of God in flesh on earth. There's God the Father, which is the infinite God, that can't be kind of described in the sense the way we try to describe. That's why the Hebrews use 216 letters. And then we have the Spirit of God, really, that indwells us. In fact, without the Spirit of the Creator being in us and every other living being, you couldn't exist. There's a fight for the flesh of mankind and for our destiny, and also for the souls of mankind and our civilization. And we're at the crux of history where we are at the nexus of a cosmic battle. This is not just a battle of Earth, it's a cosmic battle. And so what we're seeing now is, it's written right in the book of Revelation, to send the globalists are actually looking at us like a template, to sort of run it through so that they can appear to each other as if they're in control of it, when in actual fact, they know that the future, they've been written out of the book because they don't win. But the level of destruction they're trying to meet on the Earth right now with QE3, with an impending war in the Middle East, they want to push to start a thermonuclear, biological, chemical war. And if people need to start realizing that what's going on with the Earth changes are going to trump up all the craziness of these various factions that are fighting each other for control of the future world once they bring out their ancient ceremony of Pahanuk, or the Phoenix, to maximize the chaos on Earth so they can maintain and control and bring forth the new civilization once they crash the current one. So in those, you need to get way out of the box to really understand this, or you'll never make sense of it. Back in a moment. Alex, I'd like you, before you transfer to Christine, tell us to summarize what you think of this data. Obviously this is pretty far out. And is it a big distraction because we have the impending collapse of the world economy? We have a move, I would say, step by step toward the Real ID. February 15th, the Real ID actually comes into law, which means every American citizen has to get a biometric ID on world standards. And by the will of the Director of Homeland Security, they can put an RFID tracker chip. The FBI are now suing every phone company in America to have a backdoor to every access to everybody's cell phone, GPS coordinates, and data or voice, etc. So we literally are walking, not blindfolded into the matrix.
Well, it's part of
people who want to see QE3 as a prelude to the Mark of the Beast, as explained this week.
Look, on the main page I have a video from an NSA whistleblower about the program, so you can understand how the beast is going to come to life. So yes, I concur absolutely. I think that we're being prepped and we're being beta tested, and I don't think that these underwater UFOs are necessarily foreign. They can also be military and domestic as well. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes, so please continue.
Okay, I'm sorry. There's a massive delay here. So anyway, the article that we write is because we do have elements that have come our way, you know, intelligence information that we have been getting for years now, that attest to the fact that these underwater intraoceanic bases are already here, they are in operation, and they are hostile in nature. And yes, there is a real foreign threat to the human species, and they are already here, and they're starting their operations. Basically, they're cloaking themselves in the sky. They can monitor off our coastlines, and they do whatever they want. I mean, the thing is happening, but it doesn't mean that all the events that we see the Navy covering up are necessarily extraterrestrial in nature. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we also don't see the angelic side of this in terms of literally angel meaning a messenger protecting planet Earth and the human population.
Well, for example, March 2010, I was targeted for assassination by the CIA. They sent a web team after me because I published something online. What did I publish? That the fact that 4 gigantic craft landed in the desert of Israel outside of Tel Aviv, and they had a top-level meeting with IDF forces to talk about the coming threat of war in the Middle East and Syria attacking Israel, and these forces guaranteeing protection to the state of Israel when these attacks start to happen.
Yeah, so what do you think of this, John or Ann?
Which part?
Any part.
Well, I appreciate Alexander's journalism and his efforts to get the truth to all of us. It's certainly cutting-edge journalism, and it's something we all need to be aware of and pay attention to.
Yeah, now, Christina Consolo, you have some updates as well on what's going on in terms of sinkholes and other areas.
Yeah, I've been paying quite a bit of attention to just, you know, in the last few weeks we've had a noticeable seismic activity increase in the area of the sinkhole in Louisiana. There's more gas that's been bubbling up at the state from at least 20 new locations. The area expanded about 1,000 square feet. That was posted yesterday. And in addition to expanding, the DNR has ordered that all 7 companies that are working on the dome to continue their investigation, and they want them to flare and vent the aquifer. But in addition to it growing over 1,000 square feet, they've had some problems with the drilling. In fact, the mud and the gas pressure was so great, they actually had to swap it out for a bigger drill a few days ago, and today the drill bit on the stubbing rig had broke and had to be swapped out. So they're continuing to have problems even with the massive machinery that they've brought in there to deal with this situation. But what was most concerning to me is the people that live in this area haven't been updated officially for 6 weeks. And they spent 3 days organizing a meeting that was supposed to take place last night. WVLA, NBC, had reported that all the officials that were invited, there were 7 government agencies and Texas Brine to attend this meeting that was supposed to happen last night, didn't show up. The only organization that showed up was Texas Brine, and they had very little information to give the people there. In fact, they postponed the meeting for another 2 to 3 weeks. And so we really don't know exactly, what the integrity is of that dome, and the problems that they're having with the machinery and the new bubbling and seismic activity is really concerning. And then we've had additional coal reports coming in from around the Gulf of Mexico, and still on the East Coast, they're still fighting with some of the ones that they've had in Brooklyn. They're having trouble fixing them.
And by the way, that's releasing radioactive uranium. And you had a report, too, about Russia in this area in the Barents Sea where an old nuclear reactor from a submarine that was sunk. And they lost a lot of submarine Russians did during the Cold War. This is a big deal story, and I remember we tracked this some years ago about liquid radioactive waste, and this could literally poison the Barents Sea and the Arctic. And the water tends to move cyclonically around the entire pole, so it can literally poison all the northern seas, including the North Atlantic, the North Pacific Ocean, etc., and the Arctic Ocean.
Well, that's right. The Russians disposed of their any extra radioactivity, but then also when their submarines wore out, if they had problems with them, or if they would just sink them in the Barents Sea, and now saying that there's a possibility that one of them, don't have it in front of me, it was 47, I forget what the letters were, could become critical. Now, what they're basing that on, I don't know. They just came out with this report this last week. But if they have an atomic explosion, nuclear submarines contain a nuclear power plant.
Right.
So you've got fuel rods and you've got control rods, and it may be that submarine has sat on the bottom of the ocean for long enough for the matrix that holds the fuel rods away from, and the control rods, has deteriorated to the point that they think the fuel rods are going to get too close together.
Yeah, they get what's called hot. After a period of time, there's degradation in their modulating rods, and as a result, the reactor gets hot. Right.
And they're saying there could be a criticality issue there, meaning that there could be a nuclear explosion undersea from the submarine. And they're saying, they're even pinpointing it to February next year. I mean, I don't know how they...
How pinpointed to February? That's, unless they're using some exotic technology such as looking glass, I don't know how they would say that.
Well, I don't either, and I can't, since the Russians wrote the article, and since they're the one that are saying...
What I suspect that the governments of the world know more about Earth's changes coming, and they know that oceanic volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. are coming because we're approaching a time and space where everything from the magnetic flux fields to the geomagnetism of the Earth to oceanic volcanism is going to change so dramatically next year and thereafter that they're predicting that this could finally crack these submarines and cause them to go critical. So.
Oh, wait a minute. I just found the material and I misread it. The information that the reactor about it was the K-27 submarine could achieve criticality and explode was released at a seminar in this February in 2012. So it's not going to explode. So
in other words, what we're saying is just the information was released then. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
That seems much more valid. Now, we have a number of reactors that are sitting at the bottom of the ocean that were releasing radioactive isotopes, and the Russians have gone back. We have that on top of the Kiroshi current coming out of Japan that brings radioisotopes to Alaska and down along the coast of British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and California into Baja. And it goes back.
There's a giant spike in strontium-90 and in cesium-137 in the ocean off of Japan.
Yeah. Well, we're just, by the way, the magma chamber for Mount Fuji is building. It's going to blow any day now. And when it does, keep a reactor site between Sendai and Fuji. Welcome back, and let's do a summary of what's going on with Fukushima. By the way, let's hope that we have no stray Israeli jets trying to bomb the Fukushima reactor. Fukushima I'm still seeing it spike up into the low 70s. And it spikes up to the low 70s and drops pretty quickly. So we're seeing waves of radiation coming in. And Arnie Gunderson stated this: when you put nitrogen to try to stabilize the critical reaction, you end up flushing radioisotopes, and when you don't put enough, you end up with hydrogen generation, which can cause a hydrogen-generated explosion that can cause criticality and a nuclear explosion. So they're walking a tightrope. None of these places are stable. The situation is almost certain going to result in the evacuation of Japan if there's a major quake. The chances of a 7-level earthquake in the next 6 months to a year is virtually guaranteed. And if there's a 7-level quake, not only the reactors there, but the ones at Chiba are likely to go, and Mount Fuji, which typically has a radial area of 200 miles that it wipes out with dust and ash. And it does it every 400 to 500 years. Really bad. The Japanese have an ancient knowledge of it. They're terrified of 109 volcanoes on Japanese islands, which are all volcanic. And there's a lot of apocalyptic literature. In fact, the very first nation that took my book, Clay and Iron, and with my permission translated into Japanese, were the Japanese. The very first nation in the world to translate Clay and Iron into any other language were the Japanese, within months after me traveling around the world in 1999 with a prophecy club. So I think we're dealing with some very apocalyptic things. You know, if we look at the timeline here, we're almost certainly next year going to have a national ID by January 15th. That's 4 months. We are moving toward the fiscal cliff, $500 billion being withdrawn from the economy. The radiation is poisoning our food, air, and water. It's being picked up not just in the northern but the southern hemisphere. They're pushing to start a war against Iran, which will certainly crash the price of food and oil right through the ceiling. So we're going to see a major, not recession, but a full blue arrest of the world economy if they get away with this. Hopefully they won't. One of the positive things, believe it or not, from the narcissistic behavior of Obama is he's likely to get in, and he will not support an Israeli attack on Iran. That's one of the positive things about dealing with the maniac Obama. Unfortunately, the other side is he's bringing in a green agenda, green taxes, carbon taxes, etc., and going to destroy industry in America, and wants to bring in a socialized Marxist-Leninist state. That's where we're going. We have two Hobbesian decisions that's just really awful. But that's where we're at. And people say, well, you're just exaggerating. No, that's, you know, in the last month I've had more, I call prophetic panic attacks and stand open visions that are not pleasant than I've had in probably 24 years. I don't know about you, John, Ann, or Alexander, or Christina, but things are, as I say, getting stranger and stranger.
Well, I believe things are accelerating and they're escalating to a point of shock. And I think that if all of us who do the research are privy to information that is not necessarily easy to to swallow, because everybody's dependent on the mainstream media, which is lame in itself, because they don't really care. The ones that do care, who are the ones that are behind reporting and publishing and doing everything that they do, which is commendable, are the ones that have to really be the ones who have to feel and know that something of huge shock and awe is about to hit us and blindside us on a Tuesday morning. And that threat is a multiple threat. It's terrorism, it's world war, it's a foreign enemy that we don't know necessarily recently, but we know it's angelic or fallen angelic in nature. We can call them aliens, we can call them whatever we want. But the thing is that people need to start getting their spiritual house in order. And I believe that's, that's the most important aspect of all of this, that people need to be ready for whatever imminent situation arises.
But also prayer can help. Prayer and preparation, I call it.
Yep.
Yeah, any suggestions, John, Ann, or Christina?
Well, Dr. Bill, we have the same list that we've been talking about for years of spiritual preparation, getting skills, getting supplies and equipment. And time's a wasting. Time to get going, get these things done.
Yeah, exactly. We had the power out 4 hours the other night, and I just sat up in bed, looked all around, and for miles around here in North County, it was black, and we had everything from TV to all our machines were working, our computers, and you even have backup satellites. So we had no problems. It was like we just sailed right through it like it didn't exist. That's why people, if they're not prepared, they're going to get in a state of shock, because one or more disasters are going to strike, and it's part of the process of breaking people down. That's why they like the idea of breaking the economy down, so eventually you're dependent on the government. And the government's not going to be there. They're not there for an emergency disaster. They're not there to provide food. They're not there to stop a plague, if it's a biological weapon, or even just a swine flu spreads. We do, by the way, have a massive increase in number of flu cases 2 months early. That's not normal. And I suspect this flu season is going to be much more vicious. It may be just a prelude to something worse that's coming down the road, but there's a lot of people getting very, very ill from this flu that's going around all over America. And, this is one of the examples of the world is just changing so rapidly. People are often distracted. They've got their sports and their other activities to keep them distracted, so they're not paying attention to what's happening. The real unemployment rate is around 22%. It's probably going to go considerably higher before it gets really bad. They want to collapse the economy to the point where then they can bring a biometric world currency. Then they'll bring back the economy to some extent, once you're willing to accept the fact that you can't have money in your pocket anymore. It has to be electronic divots in their computer. And they'll say it's all for your safety and for your protection. All you need to do is lean into the iris scanner, have your facial biometrics, your body terahertz scanner, determine who you really are, And if you're not a persona non grata, you can buy or sell anything you want, which is right out of the Bible. You cannot buy or sell, say that you have the mark or the number of the name. The number of the name basically means your number of your biometrics. That's what it means, I believe.
Well, you know, I would recommend people, if they can go to alexanderbachman.com and watch the video called Vision of the Price this weekend, watch it with your family and come to terms with the reality that the beast is coming to life. It's already here, and not only in the United States, worldwide. This beast system is already being implemented in Mexico, for example. Here, all children have been used as guinea pigs in biometric experiments. Now they have this nationwide ID card for all children. Now you can't issue invoices in Mexico, fiscally speaking, if you do not have a full 10-digit scan of your fingerprints and your iris scanned, including your passport. Now this was just out 2 weeks ago. You can't get a Mexican international passport unless you get scanned and
wow, that's quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, you're a terrorist. You're a terrorist in your own country. It's just ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, that's quite amazing. Now, so the situation basically is, a lot of people find this, how can I say, they think that we've gone over the deep end when we make these statements, even though you can prove it. Even within the so-called truth movement, I often refer to it as the bowel movement, because instead of people go cross-checking the evidence, like the pictorial evidence that you show, or the evidence that John has from multiple sources, people will often make exaggerated claims or expand it, or they'll say, well, you can't possibly know that stuff, that's not really going on. There's so many things happening on so many levels that people are overwhelmed. But they have to understand that whether it's 9/11, which we had the 11th anniversary of 9/11 recently, that was a controlled demolition. We have to understand it was also an environmental as well as a financial thing going on. The schemes are so complex that even if you're studying this full time, you can get overwhelmed. And the people, even within the area that study one thing, they can't believe that somebody else knows something that's not an area that they're studying. So it gets to be a lot. And I'm sure even when you look at experts like Alex, Jones is an expert on martial law, when he talks to financial experts, they'll say things that he's shocked at. And I'm sure the same thing goes with you, Alexander, or John, or Christina, that in many cases things are worse and a lot stranger than you ever anticipated could exist.
They sure are.
Well, yes, we find out things that are so out there that when we talk about them, you know, publicly, sometimes people do see us as on the fringe, but we're not on the fringe. I mean, this is the real things that are coming out of the ground or into our mainstream society via the mass media controlling the subconscious collective of the human species in order for them to accept the reality of what is coming upon us, which is a massive interdimensional war for not the human species, but for our very souls. And I think that it's very important to understand that our work, even though we can't directly quote the sources sometimes, is very valuable in itself, because we bring the information out, we can enrich the information that's being put online and help you understand objectively how these things are being played out.
Yeah, exactly. Check out the websites, again, thelibertyman.com, homeland-defense.com, and Christina, your website is fukushimafacts.com, and alexanderbachman.com. Back again Monday, and so